You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at that very website, or if you want to, you can mail us a letter and a contribution, at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791. So I did their Blue Gal. I mixed it up. I just mixed it up.
This is the podcast for April 8th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
And once again, we are recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we're back from that very big city up north. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Is he dead yet?
No. Don't know who you're talking about. I don't know what sort of person you might be talking about by name or nature. But no.
Well, I had a conversation with a young person this weekend, and I told them that they brought this up, and I said, I don't think it's appropriate to name a podcast, Is He Dead Yet? And then I thought about it, and I thought about the Is He Dead Yet podcast, and realized I need to copyright that, because the Midas Touch boys are going to jump right on that.
My bass guitar player in my garage band is named Is He Dead Yet? So,
Is He Dead Yet? Yeah.
Yeah, so he might have a claim on that name.
Then he might have a claim on that anyway. So then I don't know what to do.
Yeah, sorry.
But let's moving on.
Let's move on. Today, to the best of our abilities, we're going to follow Donald Trump's tantrum-driven manufacturing policy, because that's what it is, and his catastrophic tariff regime on a long and twisty trail that goes into all sorts of interesting places.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then we're going to clear the dance floor and let Driftglass have a crack at the David Brooks abomination that is the Atlantic Magazine's cover article today. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Now, let's start with how Trump is killing all of Biden's extremely successful manufacturing initiatives for the same reason. He's a pithy little asshole. And in his last at-bat, Trump tried to kill this successful and popular Affordable Care Act, and we know how that worked out for him. 41 seats in the House. Because any example of Democrats using the government to create policies that actually help people cannot be allowed to exist.
Yeah. And this predates Trump by decades.
Yeah. No matter how petty or small, every Democratic accomplishment must be rooted out and destroyed and buried under metric tons of bullshit about non-existent cost savings and all the usual Republican blah, blah, blah about how bloated and awful the federal government is. The federal government does things that private industry can't or won't do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might remember this headline. Oh, you probably wouldn't. From less than a month ago. This is from Car Scoops, February 24th, 2025. Quote, in a sweeping policy shift, Donald Trump's administration has just reportedly ordered the shutdown of all electric vehicle charging stations at federal buildings across the United States. This decision effectively flips the switch on hundreds of EV chargers across the country, with approximately 8,000 charging ports managed by the U.S. General Services Administration, GSA. The move will affect thousands of charging spaces across the nation and is already underway. This directive also includes plans to offload recently acquired EVs from the federal fleet. Combined, these moves signal a sharp reversal from the sustainability initiatives championed by the previous administration, unquote. This is also from Car Scoops and also from about 2 months ago. Quote, Trump's budget cuts threaten Biden's $6.6 billion Rivian loan for EV factory. Georgia's governor admitted that the Rivian loan could be retracted by the Trump administration. The planned Rivian factory would have the ability to produce up to 400,000 EVs each year. Rivian planned to start production at the 9 million square foot site in 2028. In the final few days of the Biden administration, the government approved a huge loan of $6.6 billion to EV startup Rivian for the construction of its long-planned manufacturing plant in Georgia. However, as President Donald Trump continues to slash federal expenditures, the viability of the loan is under threat. However, during a recent interview, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp admitted he's not sure about the future of the federal loan. Why not, Brian?
Yeah.
They secured that loan at the tail end of the Biden administration. And, I think there's no secret that the Trump administration is taking a look at all those things, Kemp told WSB TV 2. So I don't really know where that stands right now. Rivian plans to start drawing on the loan next year and remains confident the money will still be available for it. We're working hard to onshore U.S. manufacturing, providing thousands of American jobs here in Georgia, the firm said. If the loan is pulled, it threatens chaos, according to Georgia Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff, unquote. Kind of wild that CarScoops went out of its way to make sure its readers knew that it was Georgia Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff, but failed to mention in the multiple times it mentioned Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, that he's a Republican.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what the Republican president is up to.
Kind of a little oopsie there. And we lead off with that today because, as you know, if you've spent any time here with the Professional Left podcast, we're big believers in American manufacturing. Very big believers.
Yes, we are.
But in a very specific, targeted way, and only as one integral piece of a larger strategy for long-term, broad-based American prosperity. The kind of thing that the Biden administration was heading towards and the Harris administration would have continued and improved on. Now, we were in Chicago over the weekend. That was the big city up north. Surprise, surprise. And it was both great and strange, a little bit weird to be back on my old stomping grounds. On Saturday, goddamn Cubs traffic. I used to live in Wrigleyville, and I'm reliving that now. The Cubs traffic and blocking streets off and police everywhere and crowds everywhere made it just impossible to get to some of my old haunts, given my time constraints. And on Sunday morning, the last day we were there, many places are closed due to it being, Sunday. A lot of churches were open. We saw more missionary Baptist churches in a row, dozens and dozens and dozens of them, all on the south side and the southwest side.
Yeah,
it was very impressive. But my old offices were just down the block a ways from where Blue Gals Knitting Coven was meeting on Sunday morning.
It was a knitting trip, people.
It was a knitting trip. It was a 100% knitting trip. Knitting and stuff. So I went for the stuff. And the stuff was
my
great.
chauffeur to the knitting trip.
Yeah. And we both had a very good time. And the knitting people were wonderful. The hotel was full of them, which was...
The hotel was full of knitting people. Yes, it was.
When you invited me down to the luncheon area to meet the opera singer who sings cover in a Pink Floyd cover band.
She's in a Pink Floyd cover band. She's a yarn dyer. She has beautiful colors of yarn. And she's, 6 feet tall? She's
about that.
And redhead and an opera singer.
Yeah.
And then, and I've got a Pink Floyd cover band, too. It's like,
this
you need to meet Driftglass, because he's the biggest Pink Floyd fan there is.
I came down, and no surprise that in this case, it was like 97 women with needles and me. So I was I minded my manners very, very well. Anyway, the place where I used to work was just down the block, and it's a public library now, Chicago Public Library. And surprise, surprise, it's closed on Sunday morning. So boo-hoo, I couldn't go in and see where I used to sit or whatever books are in there. But it's in a neighborhood where I had spent a lot of time during the 90s doing other business. And at that time, this neighborhood was very sad and run down and sketchy and kind of abandoned sort of place, the place that development and prosperity had left behind. Now, that all started to change when the city of Chicago moved hundreds of white-collar middle-class jobs, including my job, into the old Goldblatt's building on the corner of Chicago Avenue and Ashland. Now, first, the artists and actors showed up. That's no surprise. They moved into the neighborhood because while the area was beginning to show signs of life, there was still lots of loft space left over from the olden days of manufacturing, and they were still cheap and available. So we started having local artists do installations in the display windows that were left over from the Goldblatt's glory days. Win-win for everybody. After that came the bars. Lots of bars, because city workers are drinkers. Upscale restaurants and funky little eateries that I enjoyed very much. The shoe stores, the boutique furniture places, the hair salons, the nail salons, and dog groomers, and on and on and on and on and on. And all that was down to the fact that a few hundred white-collar middle-class jobs had been transplanted into that neighborhood. Now, those jobs are gone now. In fact, the entire Chicago workforce area ceased to exist shortly after the city laid me off.
And let's be clear, that was the 2008 crash.
That was the 2008 crash where my department's budget actually doubled. But they needed to make room for people who were more politically connected in other departments whose budgets collapsed. So they started firing people at my salary level. And since I had no political connections or favors to call in, they got rid of me. That entire workforce area has now been folded into the Cook County workforce area. Its much reduced offices are now found in the George W. Dunn Cook County Administration Building in the Chicago Loop. So now they're just a tiny province lost in the labyrinth of Cook County government, which must be fucking humiliating. Now, I'm not saying that the incredibly short-sighted decision to get rid of that department's smartest, most capable, hardest working, most innovative assistant commissioner in order to make room for some lumpen hack with political connections led directly to the department vanishing from the face of the earth. Or wait, am I? Yes, I am. That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm definitely saying that 100%. That's what happened. They got rid of me, like the old Mark Twain saying, I joined the Confederate Army, served for 6 weeks, I deserted, and the South fell. So that's what happened to my department. They got rid of me, and they couldn't tolerate it, and they collapsed. Anyway, what happened to that area around East Village is a really good example of how a successful model of targeted advanced manufacturing can work, because there are still thousands of skilled manufacturing openings for workers all over the country.
Yes, there are.
Yep.
And Trump's destroying them.
Yes.
So, now, this is from a source which we guarantee you no other liberal political podcast will have. This is from the January 13th, 2025 issue of Supply Chain Management Review.
I'm doing my old little double hand job dance now because I read the shit. Yeah, I actually read this stuff.
Well, it's important, and this is what Biden did.
Right. This is the nerdy stuff.
This is why the stock market got up to 30,000.
Yeah.
Because he cared about union jobs. Okay, moving on. This is, quote, labor shortages remain an ongoing concern in many parts of U.S. manufacturing. Data shows more upside risk for labor shortages worsening this year. Though U.S. manufacturers are not facing the endemic challenges with recruiting labor that they suffered in 2021 and 2022, issues regarding labor shortages are ongoing. Data from the Census Bureau's quarterly survey of plant capacity utilization, which, Doge had already cut that.
Of course.
Through the third quarter of 2024 shows that approximately 20.6% of manufacturing plants in the U.S., that's 1 out of 5, that failed to produce at their full capacity cited insufficient supply of labor or labor skills as a key constraint in their production, unquote.
So, yeah, follow this. We want high-paying manufacturing jobs. They're good on their own and they're good for other reasons. And for obvious reasons, the manufacturing labor shortage peaked at the crazy high levels during the pandemic. That's, factories shuttering themselves, sending people home. That just was a statistical blip. And it's come down some since then. But the sector-wide labor shortages are still very, very real. And the effects of such shortages can show up in places you would not necessarily think about. For example, the transportation sector. Now, why would a manufacturing labor shortage affect transportation jobs? Once again, quoting from the estimable Supply Chain Management Review, because we here do our goddamn homework, quote, mass deportations and labor shortages.
Oh my goodness. Do you mean that people who are not white and might get deported by the Trump administration actually work for a living?
They do. And they work very hard and they're very good at their jobs. And a whole bunch of jobs out there in the economy depend on them staying around and doing those jobs.
That's right.
Back to the supply chain management, or SCMR as we in the know call it. Food manufacturing, which is the largest sector of U.S. manufacturing by employment, at over 1.7 million individuals, as well as contribution to for-hire trucking demand, generating roughly 14.5% of all ton miles of freight hauled by for-hire carriers based on the Commodity Flow Survey.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, you come for the humor, but stay for the nerd, because we do like to nerd out here.
Oh, gosh.
Is widely regarded as the sector of manufacturing whose labor is most vulnerable to potential mass deportations, unquote.
And they will simply leave and won't show up for work if they think they're going to get arrested. And Absolutely. That is a huge problem.
Yeah. And if you're trying to import skilled labor,
Yeah.
Nobody from a foreign country is going to come here.
They don't want to
Why
come
would
here
they?
now, even
They're-
from Canada,
Yeah.
especially from Canada.
Yeah, on a visa, green card, what sort of lunatic would come to this country when they can be thrown into a Venezuelan gulag
Right,
because
or
Trump
El Salvadoran prison for nothing.
for nothing?
Yeah. So this is from a 2011 report. We're gonna get through this nerd part. I promise you. This is from a 2011 report from Camwine Associates, which specializes in economic development, workforce development, and talent retention, as well as industry analytics and strategy.
Ooh, sexy.
We're going to talk. This is, quote, the multiplier effect. Which industries are the biggest job creators?
This is the payoff.
Do you
baby.
care about jobs? Do you care about the economy? Is he dead yet?
You got to. If you care about jobs, you have to pay attention to the multiplier effect.
You absolutely do. Understanding the importance of different industries to the local economy has become increasingly important to economic development organizations. With limited resources, economic development professionals may consider how they can get the biggest return on their investment. Economic multipliers are one tool that can be used to help with this. We've talked about this before.
We have, yeah.
Jobs multipliers tell us how many new jobs in other industries are created by a single job in the industry you are. So, for instance, if you open up a drag queen bar,
Sure.
you're probably going to have a job for a wig store,
Sure.
and a makeup store, and a shoe store,
Liquor
and
distributor.
maybe a costume store.
Oh,
Those are all jobs that might be created by opening up a drag queen bar in your neighborhood.
I can tell you from secondhand, but accurately secondhand, because a colleague and associate of mine used to run a very successful dress shop in Springfield. Do you know who she sold the most expensive dresses to?
Drag queens.
Strippers.
Strippers. Oh,
Strippers.
yeah.
Because they had to come off. The zipper had to go all the way down. They had to work correctly. So the existence of the Deja Vu Adult Club made sure her business was profitable.
Benefited her business. Yeah.
That's actually how the economy works.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. So that's how jobs multipliers, that's what we're talking about. Jobs multipliers tell us how many new jobs in other industries are created by a single job in the industry you are studying. Manufacturing has a jobs multiplier of 9.0, which means on average, every manufacturing job you creates 9 other jobs in other industries. In fact, the manufacturing sector accounts for 10 of the 15 individual industries with the largest jobs multipliers. The others are real estate, wholesale trade, and information. So if you create a factory and you have 10 workers in your factory, there are going to be likely 90 jobs
right there in your community.
In your community to support those 10 workers.
And if you open up an EV plant that employs 1,000 people, that's 9,000 jobs in your area. 10,000 jobs, 90,000 people in your area, and on it goes. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs all over the country going unfilled because of a lack of skilled workforce. So even
this is why J.B. Pritzker was so happy when the Rivian plant opened in Illinois.
Yeah, why he will go to every manufacturing place and cut a ribbon any time of the day or night.
Anytime, and be his bust a button. He was so happy because it's jobs. Yep.
As an aside, this is the shit I was working on for 10 years at the city of Chicago. Knowing this stuff, selling the idea of manufacturing as a viable sector to the late Senator Kennedy's Senate office, to downstate politicians who did not believe manufacturing was coming back, and it was a waste of time.
You're talking about Ted Kennedy, not John Kennedy. Ted Kennedy.
I'm sorry, I meant Edward
Kennedy, yes.
Your Kennedy. And lots of grandparents and older people in a blown-out neighborhood who didn't believe that putting a high school that taught manufacturing in their neighborhood was anything but an insult, because that meant taking their kids, who are mostly black and brown, and shoving them into dead-end jobs. And we had to sell them on the idea that, let's take you to factories and we'll show you those are not dead-end jobs. Modern factories are really clean and efficient, and these are middle-class jobs for your kids. So this is what I've been doing with my life for 10 years.
I was going to say, if you've been watching Love on the Spectrum this week, and this is Driftglass's obsessive interest.
Yeah, it is. Well, one of like 99 of them. But yeah,
you have a lot of other obsessive interests too. Yes, you do.
But I really do know this stuff pretty well inside and out. And I know how it works. And it also is a place for people who are very, very conservative to work with people who are very, very liberal. for
Yep.
a common goal. And that was part of my job, building coalitions of people who were in the private sector, who were business owners, very conservative, and people who were in the labor system and people in the education system to pursue a common goal. And we succeeded admirably.
And I'm going to interrupt you again just one moment and just say that Trump has lost the former CEO of Home Depot today.
Yeah.
I've been boycotting Home Depot since this man paid for Bush's second inaugural.
Yep.
Because I'm fun at parties.
That's right.
And,
and she is.
This guy is the most right-wing asshole on the planet. One of the top right-wing assholes. And he's had it with this, playing games with numbers and, we're just going to divide by 2 and it'll be perfect. Bullshit. Anyway, I wanted to say that. Yeah.
This is why I had to bring all my Home Depot purchases home in Lowe's bags, because my wife would have taken
you go to Lowe's.
I do.
For the 5% discount. Okay, moving on.
Anyway, so even marginal improvements in training and employment in manufacturing can have huge downstream benefits to the entire country, which is why any successful economic strategy must include a manufacturing component. We're not going to bring back 1 million manufacturing jobs, but if we can make hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs viable all over the country and grow them slowly, that has a huge effect on the economy. And this is one of the things, like I said, I worked on 100 hours a week when I was at the city, right up until they laid me off. In fact, after they laid me off, people kept calling me with questions about my projects until I finally had to say, hire me back or leave me alone. And they couldn't hire me back even as a consultant, so they left me alone. And that's when the whole department closed down and had to go away. And do you know who was the second greatest manufacturing president in modern American history?
And it wasn't Teddy Roosevelt.
No, it was not Teddy Roosevelt. And I would consider that modern history. LBJ might have been included there, but that's a little bit before my time. It was Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And years ago on my blog, I compiled a very, very long list of the many, many manufacturing-related projects and initiatives and investments that were made by the Obama administration that they publicized like crazy via press releases and events and ribbon cuttings and you name it. And which the legacy media, this is Democratic messaging, Blue Gal. They tried and tried and tried to get anyone interested in this, and the legacy media never mentioned it because they were too obsessed with Obama's tan suit and birth certificates and the death panels. It had nothing to do with bad Democratic messaging. It was the legacy media decided it wasn't important enough to talk about. And Obama would still be the greatest manufacturing president in modern history, except in just 4 short years, Joe Biden surpassed him.
Yep.
And let's all take a wild guess who is working to tear all that down, shall we?
Is he dead yet?
Yeah.
No.
It's the same warped asshole who's trying to obliterate every other accomplishment by any Democrat. And while we take a look at all the damage Trump has caused in less than 3 months, keep in mind that the job multiplier effect also works in reverse.
Yeah.
Every manufacturing job lost represents 9 jobs in other industries that will also be lost. If you're
wondering,
we're
headed for a recession.
Yeah. Well, and in the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, if you wonder why neighborhoods suddenly took a turn and there was this like brick building at the end of a block and no one was ever sure what goes on in there, those were the 20, 30, 40 manufacturing jobs that somebody's dad had opened up with his GI Bill loan back in the 40s and 50s. And those 20 or 30 or 40 jobs kept 9 times that many people employed in the community. So when it packed up and left and nobody noticed, suddenly the community starts losing jobs. The Austin neighborhood, gutted in Chicago because the Brock's candy factory moved out and a bunch of other manufacturing jobs moved out. Anyway, this is from the Washington Post today. Quote, a stunning number of electric vehicle battery factories are being canceled. Billions of dollars in clean energy projects have been canceled since Donald Trump took office again. Over the past few years, electric vehicle manufacturing facilities produced lithium batteries, car parts, and critical minerals sprang up all over the United States. Drawing on cash and tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, these factories promised to provide jobs largely in Republican areas and to set the nation on a path to making homegrown electric vehicles. But even before President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on imports, many of those projects were being canceled, leaving thousands of jobs and the shift to clean energy in doubt. According to data from Atlas Public Policy, a policy research group, More projects were canceled in the first quarter of 2025 than the previous 2 years combined. Those cancellations included a $1 billion factory in Georgia that would have made thermal barriers for batteries and a $1.2 billion lithium-ion battery factory in Arizona. It's hard at the moment to be a manufacturer in the United States given uncertainties on tariffs, tax credits, and regulations, said Tom Taylor, senior policy analyst at Atlas Public Policy. Hundreds of millions of dollars in additional investments appear to be stalled, he added, but haven't been formally canceled yet, unquote.
And this is one I just want to cry.
Yeah.
I'm right there with Nancy Pelosi on January 6th.
Yeah.
I want to punch him in the face.
Yep.
And I'll go to jail and I'll be happy.
Don't worry.
He did this by himself, 100% responsible.
If you go to jail, President Buttigieg will pardon you. Don't worry about it.
Oh, thank you for that image. Although Buttigieg is a little too conservative for me, Driftglass. I just want you to know.
I know. I know.
But instead of those sorts of jobs, the Trump administration has a very different vision for America's manufacturing future.
Great American workers. You know, we are going to replace
on other networks.
armies of millions of people. Well, remember, the army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones. That kind of thing is going to come to America. It's going to be automated, and great Americans, the trade craft of America, is going to fix them, is going to work on them. They're going to be mechanics. There's going to be HVAC specialists. There's going to be electricians. The trade craft of America are high school educated Americans. The core to our workforce is going to have the greatest resurgence of jobs in the history of America to work on these high-tech factories, which are all coming to America. That's what's going to build our next generation of America.
That's right, kids. Your $9,000 iPhone will be ready in 6 years. And that was your idiot Commerce Secretary and mine, Howard Lutnick, on Face the Nation this Sunday, shitting the bed hard enough to achieve orbit. However, Lutnick may have been spared the title of stupidest Trumper on the Sunday shows. That's a fight right there.
Mm-hmm.
But only by virtue of the fact that moron wax figuring Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on Meet the Press to tell America that he saw no reason to expect a recession. And Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins, went on CNN to do this.
President Trump laid out with a giant graphic of all the countries where tariffs were going to be, what he called reciprocal tariffs, were going to be imposed. And you're imposing a 10% tariff on the herd in McDonald Islands. The herd in McDonald Islands have 0 human inhabitants. They have 0 exports. They have 0 imports. They do have a lot of penguins. Why are you putting import tariffs on islands that are entirely populated by penguins?
Well, I mean, come on, Jake. Obviously, here's the bottom line. We live under a tariff regime from other countries. We have too long
the McDonald Islands is not imposing
the idea that America goes first. I mean, come on. Whatever. Listen, the people that are leading this are serious, intentional, patriotic, the smartest people I've ever worked with. I did not come up with the formulas. I'm the ag secretary. I studied agriculture at Texas A&M.
I almost feel sorry for her, but I don't. Yes, Team Tariff has now sunk to the level of Troy McClure, Meat and You, Partners in Freedom.
Mr. McClure, I have a crazy friend who says it's wrong to eat meat. Is he crazy?
No, just ignorant. You see, your crazy friend never heard of the food chain. Just ask this scientician. He'll tell you that in nature, one creature invariably eats another to survive. Don't kid yourself, Jimmy. If a cow ever got the chance, he'd eat you and everyone you care about.
All right, so back to Chicago, because while we were in Chicago, I paid a visit to the mecca of Midwest liberal radio, the one that I listened to when I was in Chicago, even though I had to carry my radio around and with the antenna to catch it because the signal was so goddamn weak at that time. That would be WCPT, the proud home of Stephanie Miller and Tom Hartman, and on the weekends, Hal Sparks and Johnny Million. I happened to be in the area, and it had about half an hour to kill, so I dropped in, and the Sunday crew could not have been more nice. They were amazing. 2 young men. They had a block of time that they didn't have to do anything but play the music they wanted, so they were playing Rush when I walked in. And they had transitioned to Cab Calloway during that time. I thought, this must be the coolest job in America, hanging out here on Sundays. They had the Stephanie Miller poster up. One of the gentlemen went in the back and got me a T-shirt, which I thought was incredibly generous and kind. I took pictures. It was fun, and I gave them my card. I gave them the Professional Lift Podcast card.
Ooh.
It turns out both of them are graduates of Columbia College, which I graduated from, and at which I took a job reforming and rehabilitating and rebuilding the academic computing department. So we had a ball. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and it was very great and welcoming. Now, with that in mind, this longtime stalwart bastion of liberal voices here in the Midwest, on the way back home, you and I, Blue Gal, listened to a new podcast.
Right.
I think it's called Found Out.
Found Out. Yep.
It was created by a bunch of the white dudes for Kamala, I believe.
White dudes for Harris.
White dudes for Harris, which is great. Applauded at the time. Think they did all they could. That was launched on the basis of a couple of TikTok videos that went viral.
Right.
And the guys who do this podcast, and they're all guys, were fine, and we wish them very well. But
their sound quality is great. Their content is very good.
Yep.
Yeah. And go listen to them. Found Out they have 3 episodes up so far.
Yeah. Well,
and they're very professional about it. Yeah.
That's the thing. They have 3 episodes up. But they
have 3 episodes up.
They have 3 episodes up. Based on 2 TikTok videos that went viral. Mm-hmm. They got picked up by the Harris campaign and run, which is all great. That's a great strategy, and I'm glad they're doing it. But hearing them say that they went from white dudes for Harris and a couple of viral videos to podcasting, and it's doing great after 3 episodes, is because there's no liberal podcasts out there anywhere that feature normal people speaking like normal people in the real world. There's just none out there. There just aren't any. Zero, zip, nada. And so they had to start one because that space is completely devoid and empty of any other voices. Because, brothers, what can I say? What can I say to you, my friends? I hope you're listening to this because we respect you and we like what you're doing. But our Ma and Pa Real People podcast, talking like real people out here in the real world, coming to you live from out here in the middle of Middle America, we're up to episode 890.
Yep.
That's not 890 on your AM dial. That's episode number 890. That's 2 podcasts a week, plus Blue Gal's awesome knitting podcast, plus we do a science fiction university thing from as time and events allow. But we've been at this for more than 15 years.
Yeah. We've been at it for 15 years.
Yeah. We're here.
And I got to say, it is kind of funny. 2 things. One is youngest child saying, what we really need is another podcast full of white guys. and also, the number of people I have heard in the past month say, no Democratic messaging. There's no Democratic messaging. We're the only ones.
There's nobody out there.
There's nobody out there doing it. Everybody's doing it now.
Right.
So before we clear the decks for a David Brooks special report, a reminder that Kristi Noem is a real piece of work. The whole administration, by the way, is a real piece of work. We've got Doug Burgum insisting on warm chocolate chip cookies baked in the Interior Department ovens.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Bongino has insisted that he needs a 20-person security detail.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that we're talking about in terms of corruption and nonsense that no Democrat would ever get away with, it all has to do with Citizens United and campaign finance. And Citizens United brought all the totally idiotic grifters to the yard.
Yeah.
If you want to get rid of them, you got to stop paying them. If the money's not there, they'll go away.
Yeah, they'll do something else. They'll preach, they'll go back
to
to
Instagram or whatever. Yeah. Right. So this is Kristi Noem, an Associated Press analysis of recently released travel records found more than $150,000 in expenses tied to Noem's political and personal activity and not South Dakota business. This is when she was governor. That included numerous trips to Palm Beach, Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is, okay? The expenditures include $7,555 in airfare for a 6-day trip to Paris. So that's very much like Sarah Sanders, right?
Uh-huh.
Where Kristi Noem gave a speech at a right-wing gathering, meeting in Paris. Not Paris, Texas, either. Costs associated with a bear hunt in Canada with her niece, and a book tour that included a stop in New York City. An additional $2,200 stemmed from and this is Associated Press, not me, a controversial trip last year to Houston for dental work that she showcased on Instagram.
Man, that seems so like the distant past.
Here's the part that's stuck in my craw and proof of how everything is wrong with the way Republican politicians in particular, spending money. This is the quote. "The spending offends a lot of people," said Dennis Daugaard, a former Republican South Dakota governor. All right, got that?
Yeah.
The spending offends a lot of people. And this is a former Republican governor of South Dakota who held the same job as Kristi Noem. He added that costs generated by Noem's ambition for higher office could have been paid with campaign funds. I read that. No.
It's an open door
People donated to the campaign for her campaign.
It's an open door for bribery.
It's an wide open door for bribery, grift, and slush funds.
Yeah.
And nobody is penalizing or prosecuting or checking the numbers because the FEC is half Republican.
Yeah. And totally toothless. Totally
toothless.
Yep.
When you get rid of the FEC and turn it, and once we get rid of Kash Patel, turn it over to the Justice Department.
Oh, that'd be cool.
If you spend campaign money on personal expenses, you get fined 300% out of your personal funds, and the candidate is responsible. That's how it works.
And
in my personal opinion,
I don't know how many people understand just how heavily regulated government spending actually is when it comes to
you can't
giving
have a sandwich
money
from somebody, right?
When I was at the city, I had to sign an ethics release every 6 months. You tell me wherever I got a penny of dollars outside of the job.
I remember that because you and I talked about, I think on email, about you doing a fundraiser for your blog, and you said I can't do a fundraiser for my blog.
Right, I can't do it.
If somebody sent me $1 for my blog, I'd have to report that I have a blog, and I'd get fired.
That's right. And it was a little bit of a bind until they fired me, and then it was possible for me to do fundraising.
You.
Problem solved. But I mean, we would have barbecues occasionally and picnics, just sort of, morale building. Those are all done by voluntary contributions from people in the office. Kicking in $5 or $10 or having a bake sale or something like that. None of that was from outside sources. We got T-shirts from some outfits. But if somebody sent anything more than $50 worth of whatever, like a deli plate, nope, can't accept it. And that is true across almost all civil service that I'm aware of in the state and federal government. It doesn't mean that there's not corruption going on or people taking money under the table, because that's what aldermen do all the time. Right. But it is a fact that there are orders of magnitude more corruption in the private sector where this shit doesn't get regulated and people do not have their eyes out for everything all the time. Every I needs to be dotted and T crossed than anywhere in government. So this idea that this snipe hunt that Musk is on for the waste, fraud, and abuse, the trillions of dollars in Social Security is being ripped off, is all a lie. I mean, there are reforms that are necessary, and you would never find me saying otherwise. But it's complete bullshit. It's a desire to break the government, strip it for parts, sell the parts, and make individuals rich. Now, I believe it is time for us to move on to another topic. My dear. As we mentioned earlier in this podcast, we've been doing this thing for more than 15 years now. And I know that during the last couple of weeks, I've let it slip once or twice that last week was my 20th blogiversary. And thank you, everyone, for the kind words and letters and anniversary fundraising contributions. Thank you, thank you. So the anniversary is over. Time to take down the balloons, clean up all the bottles, kick out all the drunks, and get on with the here and now, right? Let us move forward. And then I opened my email inbox, which overnight had been flooded by alert fans and readers with a story which was the Atlantic magazine's banner headline that day. And that story is entitled, "I Should Have Seen It Coming" by David fucking Brooks. Fuck! So, out the window goes my genius plan to put the past in the past, because after rooting through my archives for bits and bobs, out of which to write an appropriately, let's say, Driftglassian essay on the myriad sins against truth and history and journalism Mr. Brooks has committed while at the New York Times, I happened across the very first vivisection I ever performed on a David Brooks column, a column about his slowly dawning realization that maybe his party was going just a little bit funny in the head. And that column of his contained sentences like, quote, "The Republican Party is running into a problem, the conservatism of the American people. Over the past decade, the Republicans have set themselves up as the transformational party, but the American people have a taste for order and a distrust of those who want too much change on too many fronts too quickly," unquote. Which, at the time, I helpfully translated into the language of humans as this. They are scared shitless that the crazier-than-a-shithouse rat theocrats that the evil liberals have always warned them about might actually exist and have the keys to the car. Oh, and all the MapQuest route planners they left behind as clues have a place called Armageddonville, circled in big red crayon. Brooks's column also had sentences like this, quote, "Then there is Social Security reform. Republicans set forth a plan to give people some control over their own retirement accounts. Here, too, Republicans have been surprised by the tepid public support," unquote, which, again, I helpfully translated into human language as, "We were all shocked when the public didn't think letting Thurston Howell's idiot son bulldoze mom's retirement money into the craps table was a spiffy notion." So, first, never again let it be said that no one had been sounding the alarm about what was going on in the Republican Party before Trump showed up. Because second, that post of mine will have its 20th birthday tomorrow, because I wrote it on April 9th, 2005.
Fuck!
Now, in case you are unfamiliar, David Brooks has been writing one of these, the GOP may have stumbled a little, but trust me, it'll all work out columns every few months for the past 23 years. And it's one of 3 or 4 variations of tepid horseshit he cranks out that are so nearly identical to each other that they might as well have been generated by an algorithm. For example, given his Atlantic article is entitled, "I Should Have Seen This Coming," you might reasonably assume that these quotes from Mr. Brooks can be found buried somewhere 1,000 words deep down in that thing. Here's the first quote. "Moreover, many in the media, especially me, did not understand how they would express their alienation. We expected Trump to fizzle because we were not socially intermingled with his supporters and did not listen carefully enough. For me, it's a lesson that I have to change the way I do my job if I'm going to report accurately on this country," unquote. And aside, the idea that David Brooks has ever reported accurately on this country is hilarious. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the second quote. Quote, "I messed up big time in not knowing Trump was coming. And so when something like that happens, you take a look at yourself and you think, what did I miss about America? And I'm too much in the Acela corridor. I've got to get out. That's one thing," unquote. But if you guessed that those quotes are from the Atlantic article in April of 2025, yesterday, you'd be wrong. They're both from nearly a decade ago, from March of 2016, when Brooks wrote a nearly identical article in the New York Times, because this is how Brooks operates. You see, 20 years ago, I, your humble podcaster and blogger Driftglass, made kind of a bet with myself to keep up to date with which lies and delusions were the new hotness among the Beltway pundits and elite centrist politicians. I needed to keep an eye on Brooks and document what I saw. And I've done thousands and thousands of posts about him in the last 20 years, because out of all the quote-unquote sensible conservative centrist frauds who had insinuated themselves into the institutional media and were methodically destroying it from within, I saw clearly that this balding, bespectacled little nebbish was and still is that ecosystem's apex predator. Brooks is the worst of the worst because he uses his ubiquity and his influence to shield the GOP from serious scrutiny behind a scrim of lies, deflections, and both sides do it. And while the horror that was spawning itself inside the GOP like a fast-moving cancer was right there, clear as crystal, black and white for anyone to see who wanted to take a look.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Brooks has spent his entire career choosing not to look. In point of fact, he chose to lie to his readers over and over and over again. Just as Fox News and hate radio grew wealthy and powerful telling the reprogrammable meatbags of the Republican base the lies they wish to believe, so too did Brooks make himself wealthy and influential telling New York Times readers and NPR listeners and PBS and Meet the Press viewers the lies that they very much wanted to believe. When looked at over the span of decades, as I have done, Brooks's columns have the unmistakable stink of routinized institutional duplicity, a ritual of dishonest and diluted mantras repeated over and over and over again, especially when it comes to the state of the GOP. His readership, Brooks's readership, which includes U.S. presidents, university presidents, senators, CEOs, and captains of industry, these are all movers and shakers who all desperately want to believe him, have allowed themselves to feed on Brooks's toxic blather over and over again because it's so reassuring to their worldview. However, passing off delusional spitballing as some kind of workable elite strategy could only ever take David Brooks so far. Same with his continuous whitewashing of the GOP's depraved past. Necessary, of course, but not sufficient. To pull all of what he has done off, Brooks has always had one more enormous sledgehammer of a lie in his pundit kit. A lie that he has repeated with such robotic regularity in virtually every goddamn column for decades that after a while, I got to where I could predict with frightening accuracy exactly how that lie would be used in each column, predicting it almost down to the paragraph in which Brooks would drop the razor in the apple. And my wife will vouch for me on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was scaring her for a while there. And this Atlantic article is being praised to the rafters by all the usual credulous chumps is no different. Here is David Brooks smack in the middle of the article about how I didn't see it coming and I should have today because conservative allies like David Brooks cannot fucking help themselves. Quote, of course, the left made it easy for them. The left really did purge conservatives from universities and other cultural power centers. No, they didn't. The left really did valorize a meritocratic caste system that privileged the children of the affluent and screwed the working class. Take it up with Joe Biden and Barack Obama, you asshole. The left really did pontificate to their unenlightened moral inferiors on everything from gender to the environment. And where did they hear all of this supposed leftist propaganda? They heard it from Rush Limbaugh and Hate Radio and Fox News. They heard it warped and misrepresented as propaganda, which is something you never hear someone like Brooks say. Back to his quote. The left really did create a stifling orthodoxy that stamped out dissent, which is why nobody's allowed to disagree with us on this liberal podcast. If you tell half the country that their voices don't matter, then the voiceless are going to flip over the table, unquote. Blame the fucking liberals. Blame the fucking liberals. Did you notice how Brooks made 50 years of history just magically disappear right then? Like he does in every column? 30 years of Hate Radio is gone. 25 years of Fox News gone. The Tea Party gone. And that 8-year racist primal scream that was his party's reaction to Barack Obama, all just gone. Like a fart in a firestorm. Brooks has been so successful in selling his top shelf both sides do it snake oil to credulous elites that this was Senator Cory Booker's opinion of David fucking Brooks as of February of this year. Quote, I've had the honor of knowing David Brooks for years. I admire him and have been deeply moved, informed, inspired, and bettered by his books and talks. He was a Republican when I met him. I don't know his party affiliation now. What I do know is he has always been a man of virtue, objective reasoning, pragmatism, wisdom, and invaluable insights, unquote. And this was Judge Michael J. Ludig's opinion of David fucking Brooks today. You might remember Ludig from his many, many, many guest appearances on MSNBC. He was that lifelong Republican and arch-conservative judge until he changed sides on January 6, 2021. And this is what Judge Ludig had to say about David Brooks today. Quote, from the great David Brooks of the New York Times in the May volume of The Atlantic, everyone should read every word of his historic piece. It's worth the price of a subscription to The Atlantic. Without question, the most courageous magazine in America today. So, I've been doing this for 20 years, flapping my arms, making no difference. And yet, I do not despair. I do not consider my time wasted. No, the elite's opinions haven't changed. They still worship at the feet of David Brooks. Because for every senator or judge or CEO or Meet the Press host who has lavished Brooks with treacly praise, down here at the grassroots level where all things begin, there is a very different story going on. Mm-hmm. And this is thanks in no small part to you, our dear listeners. because every day we see good people flying the both sides do it banner all across social media.
Yep.
It's gotten to the point where pundits now feel the need to badly pre-buttle their stupid opinions with assurances that this isn't one of those both sides do it things, which of course only calls attention to how very much a both sides do it thing it is.
Yeah.
And you and I've seen this over and over again, Blue Gal. It's effective. It really does work.
Yep.
They're running scared this way. You see, Brooks's relationship with the actual here and now in America has always been a lot like his first marriage, a disaster from which Brooks has been trying to get as far away as humanly possible because it is the graveyard of all of his ridiculous postulating and pontificating about man and God and culture and politics. This is why David Brooks has always reserved some of his biggest, gassiest lies for long paeans on the subject of conservatism's extraordinary imaginary past, which is always just out of sight over the Republican rearview mirror, and conservatism's awesome imaginary future, which is always just over the Republican horizon. And you know what? He would have gotten away with it, too, if it weren't for those meddling Republican voters.
Yep. Those MAGA voters ruined it for him.
Yep. They ruined it. They did not create the Republican Party. Trump did not create the Republican Party. Trump exposed the Republican Party.
Yep.
And David Brooks has been lying about that party for as long as he's been writing. And it is intolerable to him that he should be solely responsible or wrong or just anything other than just misbegotten about this, that he created this problem. He lowered the bar for admission to the president, to the White House, for Trump by both siding everything to the point where everyone thought, who was undecided, thought, well, what difference does it make if it's Hillary or Trump? Who cares? Yeah. What difference does it make if it's Harris?
But then he wrote a book about humility, Driftglass, and taught a class at Yale about humility.
Yeah, it's weird how...
Even though they banished him... They've banished all conservative thought from universities.
It's weird how they banished all conservative thought from universities, except for David Brooks at Yale, of all places, and other places. So yeah, no, he's just here. The coda on this is he's full of shit and always has been.
Yeah,
and people still believe him.
But our listeners and good liberals around the country have picked up on this. Both sides don't.
They have. They really have. It caught on hard.
Yeah.
And next podcast, we're going to talk about Joe Manchin a little bit. So,
we are on Thursday. And we're scheduled to be on Bob Cesca tomorrow.
Yes, we are scheduled to be on Bob Cesca tomorrow. So we
we'll
very much look forward to that.
We want to thank Bob Cesca. Bob Cesca was on vacation last week, and he ran our last three shows with Bob Cesca as a filler.
Yeah.
So that his audience could become reacquainted with us. And we're just grateful for that. That's really nice.
That was after the check cleared. After the check. No,
the check. He's promoting us on Patreon too. He's so nice.
And that's why we do want to, bring into the conversation that podcasts like Found Out.
Right.
People. Right. I mean, we there really are a lot of us out there. We're just kind of all out here in the dark, groping around by ourselves and all kind of shooting at the same target. And there's just it requires coordination. It doesn't require reinvention of anything. We have all the facts on our side. We're right. All we need is to focus our energy on the proper targets and do it as a group, just like we did back in the good old days of blogging in 2004, 5, 6, and 7. It does make a difference, and it can make a difference again.
Feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
And my throat's a little dry right now, Blue Gal, because I just read a lot. You know what would help a lot? An espresso-based beverage, perhaps, for myself. So if you can afford, you out there, you wonderful listeners out there in podcast land can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, please buy one for us. This isn't charity. This is our job, and we've been at it a really long time. So if you can spare $5 a month or more, please spare $5 a month or more at patreon.com/proleftpod. And if you can, please share our show on social media. And if there are other podcasters out there we should be listening to, tell us about them. And if you're familiar with them, tell them about us.
Yeah.
And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And thank you again very much for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties would like me to promise that I will not dredge up the subject of David Brooks again for at least a goddamn year.
Nice try, Internet Kitties.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about got the whine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.